The war in Iran has many people wondering, do they own Trump? The answer to this question is yes. Trump is literally owned by them and bears the mark of his master on his ear to prove it.
Said, take a look at what happened.
Now, you might think I'm crazy or anti-Semitic for saying this, but given everything that is happening in the world, I think there are less crazier ideas. And if you give me just a few minutes of your time, I think this will make sense to you. Now, before I continue, you need to know that it doesn't matter if you believe in religion or mysticism or eschatology, because other people do, and they have power, and they are using this power to act on their beliefs, regardless of whether or not you share them. Everyone knows that the Jews believe in the coming of their Messiah, but what many people don't know is that the Jews believe the Messiah is alive in every generation as his soul transmigrates upon death from one body to another. Therefore, the Jews aren't waiting for the Messiah to come because the Messiah is already here. They are waiting for the Messiah to reveal himself, and he can only do that in a messianic age. So in order for the Messiah to come, the world must be in a messianic age. So think of the Messiah as a flower and the messianic age as a pot. The two go hand in hand. Now, a long-standing debate in Judaism is whether or not Jews should passively wait for the Messiah and the Messianic age or actively attempt to trigger it. Should Jews be patient and righteous and focus on obeying God's laws as they wait for redemption and salvation from exile? Or should they act upon the world and trigger the Messianic age, acting as tools for God's will and thereby redeeming themselves? Well, there have been all sorts of movements in Jewish history from those actively attempting to trigger the Messianic age. The most infamous cases are Sabbatai Zevi and Jacob Frank, both of whom were inspired by Lurianic Kabbalah, claimed to be the Messiah themselves, and encouraged their followers to act in ways that triggered the Messianic age. Remember this because it will be important later on. Now, you might remember that Trump launched this war with Iran on behalf of Israel on the eve of Purim, the Jewish holiday commemorating the Jewish victory in Persia. At the time, Persia was led by King Xerxes. Xerxes ruled over a massive empire that stretched from India to Ethiopia. He had many advisors. One of them was a Jewish man named Mordecai, but his top advisor was a Persian named Haman. Haman and Mordecai had a rivalry. After a series of insults, Haman attempted to convince King Xerxes to not only kill Mordecai, but to eliminate the Jewish presence in Persia. But after his wife, Queen Esther, revealed herself to be Jewish and a series of other events, King Xerxes decided instead to execute Haman. While Jews didn't conquer Persia in battle, they survived exile and execution. The king had a Jewish wife, and Mordecai remained his advisor.
We, the Jewish people, are commanded to destroy the enemies of our people in all times, in all places, as happened, as described in detail in Megillat Esther, in the book of Esther, where we find that 75,811 of our enemies were destroyed, including women and children. Why did this take place? Why were so many people killed? Why were women and children killed? But the answer is very simple, straightforward. Perhaps it is not politically correct in the eyes of some, but it is the true, authentic, and absolutely essential message of Purim, and it is the central truth of it is rather commemorating and remembering a past event in order that we know how to behave today in the present and in the future. Amalek still exists. We read every year, before Purim, we read Parashat Zachor, where we are commanded by Hashem to remember that which Amalek did to us and to destroy them.
So the Jews celebrate this day as a sort of victory over Persian civilization. For this reason, many found the connection between Trump's Iran war and Purim to be much more than a mere coincidence. In fact, a CNN article made this connection as well, confirming its significance. But the connection to the Iran war is actually much deeper and darker than just Purim. You see, King Xerxes was the grandson of the greatest Persian leader to ever live, Cyrus the Great. Cyrus is best known for conquering Babylonia and birthing a new Persian civilization known as the Achaemenid Empire that would stretch from the Balkans to India to Ethiopia. But Cyrus means just as much to the Jews as he does to the Persian people. During the time of Cyrus, the Jews were exiled in Babylonia. The Jews ended up in Babylonia because they were a client state of the Babylonian Empire. After a series of rebellions, however, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem and destroyed Solomon's temple, otherwise known as the First Temple. And in accordance with Babylonian custom, Nebuchadnezzar deported the Jews to Babylon in order to prevent another uprising. In Babylon, the Jews, like other exiled peoples, were allowed to practice their faith, but were not allowed to return to their lands. But the Jews had hope that they would one day be liberated. God revealed to the prophet Isaiah the coming of Cyrus some 80 years before he was born, specifying his name and how God would use him. The prophet disclosed in chapter 45 what the Lord would do for Cyrus, his anointed Messiah. He would make him a subduer of nations, give him riches, and bestow upon him a title of honor, even though Cyrus would not acknowledge him. In addition, God would use him to conquer Babylon, where the Jews were being held in captivity. The Lord's chosen ally will carry out his purpose against Babylon. His arm will be against the Babylonians. I, even I, have spoken. Yes, I have called him. I will bring him, and he will succeed in his mission. Cyrus conquered the mighty Neo-Babylonian Empire in 539 BC. God further revealed to Isaiah that Cyrus would release the Jewish captives and rebuild Jerusalem and the temple. I will raise up Cyrus in my righteousness. I will make all his ways straight. He will rebuild my city and set my exiles free. I am the Lord, who says of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and will accomplish all that I please. He will say of Jerusalem, let it be rebuilt, and of the temple, let its foundations be laid. Well, that's exactly what Cyrus would end up doing. He subdued nations, including Babylon, obtained riches, earned the title Cyrus the Great, and crucially allowed the Jews to return to their land in Jerusalem and build the Second Temple, all without acknowledging or converting to Judaism himself. Therefore, Cyrus was a non-Jewish Messiah in Jewish history. So the Iran War isn't just about Jews surviving a plot to destroy them in Persia. It's about a great non-Jewish king defeating their enemies and allowing the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. As believers in prophecy, mysticism, and the significance of numerology and dates on the calendar, the Jews today believe they are repeating history through their servant, Donald Trump. You see, in the Epstein files, there was a confidential human source that told investigators that Trump was owned and controlled by the Jewish movement, Chabad Lubavitch. Chabad is the spiritual evolution of Lurianic Kabbalah, the Jewish mysticism that inspired Sabbatai Zevi and Jacob Frank to declare themselves messiahs and take action to trigger the Messianic age. The most influential Jewish figure of the last century, Rabbi Schneerson, was the leader of the Chabad movement who infamously told Benjamin Netanyahu that he wasn't doing enough to bring about the Messiah. In fact, a core tenet of Chabad is the preparation of the world for the Messianic age. And in Judaism, there's actually a concept of two Messianic figures, not just one. The two figures are usually called Messiah ben Joseph and Messiah ben David. Messiah ben Joseph is considered to be the forerunner. He is described as a preparatory or suffering Messiah. He comes first before the final redemption. He leads Israel in wars against Israel's enemies. His role is essentially to prepare the way for the final Messianic era. Messiah ben David is the main Messiah expected in Jewish theology. He descends from King David, restores the Davidic monarchy, rebuilds or establishes the temple in Jerusalem, and rules during the Messianic age. This is the Messiah most Jews refer to when they simply say the Messiah. Chabad has long believed that Donald Trump is the forerunner to the Messiah ben David. So Chabad has long invested in Donald Trump. Their followers have overwhelmingly voted for him. Their billionaire followers funded his political rise with hundreds of millions of dollars. And their devout follower, Jared Kushner, who Dershowitz claimed was also a Mossad agent in the Epstein files according to the same confidential human source, married into Trump's family and is considered to be the one actually running the White House. And several figures around Donald Trump, like billionaire Howard Lutnick, is also considered to be a devout Chabad follower. So Chabad has worked to mold Trump over the years into the servant that he is now. But before Trump could carry out his task as the forerunner, Chabad needed him to publicly declare his servitude for them and their cause. This is because of old Judaic laws defining the relationship between a Hebrew master and his servant. Pursuant to a Judaic ritual mentioned in the Old Testament in Exodus 21:6, quote, "Then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door or the doorstep and pierce his ear with an awl. Then he will be his servant for life. In this event, the awl was used in a public legal ceremony to formalize the lifelong bond. The master brought the servant before the judges to ensure the decision was voluntary and not coerced. By piercing the servant's ear through the doorstep of the master's house with an awl in a mark of permanence, the servant became a bond servant or slave permanently. The pierced ear symbolized a commitment to always listen and obey the master's voice, and the doorpost signified that they were now a permanent part of that specific home. So for Trump to continue his loyal service to the Shabbat movement, which helped bring him to power, he would have to publicly declare his slavery to his Jewish masters by taking a piercing publicly to his ear. Now, it would be a little too obvious and frankly weird as hell for you to witness a rabbi publicly poking a hole in Trump's ear. So how could this public display of loyalty be achieved for all the world to see without raising any unusual suspicion? Well, on July 13th, 2024, while speaking at a public rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, Trump was supposedly shot in the ear by a would-be assassin. A photographer captured this moment of Trump rising defiantly before all the world with a bloodied ear. This assassination attempt, however, was actually Trump's global initiation as Shabbat's loyal bond servant, the Messiah ben Joseph, otherwise known as the Forerunner. Trump, like Cyrus the Great before him, would be the non-Jewish Messiah, obtaining riches, subduing nations, and pursuing titles of greatness, who will conquer the enemies of the Jews so that they can destroy Al-Aqsa Mosque and rebuild the temple. And if you remember, in Trump's first term, he broke with tradition and moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing it as the capital of Israel. He assassinated Qasem Soleimani during his first term, and he was the one who greenlit the Pentagon's active planning phase for this war we are currently watching years before it officially kicked off. Now, if you think I'm crazy, maybe you'll believe the Shabbat rabbi, Iser Weisberg.
The current non-Jewish Messiah was chosen to be of service to the Jewish people and the Jewish Messiah. President Trump's right ear was grazed in a symbolic gesture of Exodus 21:6, where the Torah states that a servant who wants to remain with his master needs to have his right ear pierced. Trump was designated as God's servant and anointed one, just like Cyrus the Great almost 2,400 years ago. We have clarified in several videos that the absolute deadline for the redemption is by the end of the Jewish year 5787, which corresponds to October 2nd, 2027. Thus, the redemption will surely occur during Donald Trump's tenure. And I have good reason to believe Donald Trump was chosen to be the one to redeem the sins of Esav through offering his assistance in rebuilding the Holy Temple on the Temple Mount and establishing the Jewish kingdom over all of mankind in Jerusalem. Perhaps it is no accident that the numeric value of Donald Trump in Hebrew is the same as Messiah, son of David, Mashiach ben David, 424. However, Donald Trump is mistaken if he thinks he was chosen to make America great again. But America will never become a great country on its own, because Esav's days are numbered. All our elite institutions and centers of power and influence are rotten through and through. The majority of Americans under 30 who are college educated and who are the future leaders of America support the vicious monsters of Hamas rather than the holy and courageous soldiers of the IDF. No human being, even Donald Trump, can reverse this. No, the greatness of America does not lie in its own success. America will be great when the Messiah comes, and the leader of this country, on behalf of all the good people in this country, will humbly present himself to the Jewish Messiah and ask him to accept the United States of America into a new alliance of countries who accept the leadership of the Messiah. A new United Nations will replace the current cesspool that goes by that fraudulent name. A real United Nations, united to serve God, led by the Messiah and based in Jerusalem. And my feeling is that the United States under President Trump will be the first nation to join.
It doesn't matter if you believe this. What matters is that he believes this, and so do many other Jews in the Shabbat movement, which is pro-Israel, it's Zionist, it's genocidal, and according to this confidential human source in the Epstein files, it controls the White House. So this war you are witnessing in Iran is not merely the production of AIPAC lobbying or Netanyahu or Epstein blackmail. This is not something Trump has been coerced into doing. It is something that he willingly signed up for because, as we all know, Trump is interested in pursuing greatness and legacy. This relationship with his Jewish masters has given him the ability to achieve this. By willingly becoming their servant, they have anointed him as the Messiah forerunner, giving rise to the final world order where the Messiah ben David will rule the world from Jerusalem. Without the Shabbat Jews, Trump would not be president. He would not have made it thus far. If he succeeds in Iran on behalf of Israel, he will be remembered as the second greatest figure in Jewish history, the forerunner who made the Messianic age possible. And this doesn't just please the Jews, it also pleases the Christian Zionists who are interested in an apocalyptic final battle that will bring about Jesus Christ. So when we tell you that this is more than just another bombing of the Middle East, we mean it. The Iran war is literally a battle of biblical proportions. It has geopolitical, religious, and eschatological implications. That's why Muslim scholars all over the region are saying this is a major battle between Islam and its enemies. This is a war meant to trigger the Messianic age and establish Pax Judaica, the new Jewish empire.